Commander Kim Dae-ho, stood at the big window of his ship and looked out at the strange alien world below him. The planet was called Velkin Prime, and it looked nothing like Earth. The sky was purple, and huge crystal buildings stuck up from the ground. Like frozen lightning bolts, Kim had been a peacekeeper for 15 years, and he had seen many alien worlds, but this one made him feel worried. His ship was called the Harmony, and it was built for peace talks, not fighting. The crew was small, but they were all good at their jobs. Kim looked at the reports on his desk again. The Velconian Empire had been taking over other worlds for 10 years now. They would attack peaceful planets and make all the people there work as slaves. The worst part was what they did to a race called the Tillerans. These were plant-like people who had never hurt anyone. They were very good at finding rare metals in the ground. Using their roots, the Velconians had captured billions of them and were using them like living machines to mine precious stones and metals. It was horrible. Lieutenant Park, so young, walked up to Kim with more bad news in her hands. She had been his second in command for 3 years, and she was very smart about military things. Her face looked worried as she handed him the new intelligence report. The Velconians had agreed to meet them, but something felt wrong about it. The meeting was going to happen on a space station called Aurora. It was supposed to be neutral ground where different alien races could talk safely, but the Velconians wanted very few security guards there. They said they would come with no weapons, but Kim did not trust them. The whole thing felt like a trap. Kim gathered his team together. There was Park, so young, who knew about military strategy. There was Lee Min-ho, who was their communications expert and could speak to many alien races. There was also Choi Hae-won, who studied alien cultures and could help them understand what the Velconians really meant when they talked. None of them carried weapons because that was the rule for peace talks. Old diplomats had to come unarmed to show they wanted to solve problems with words, not violence. Kim hoped the Velconians would follow the same rules, but he was not sure they would. The ship docked at Station Aurora, and Kim felt his stomach tighten with worry. The station was beautiful and clean, with special air systems that could keep many different types of aliens comfortable, but something felt wrong. The usual busy activity of a space station seemed quiet and nervous. As they walked through the corridors, Kim thought about how humans had become peacekeepers in the galaxy. Humans had only been in space for 50 years, but they were very good at helping other races solve their problems. Most aliens thought in very simple ways about right and wrong, but humans could see the middle ground and find ways for enemies to become friends. The meeting room was amazing. It had controls that could change the air and temperature for dozens of different alien species. The Velconian delegation was already waiting for them. Their leader was called War Commander Thex, and he was huge. He stood 3 meters tall with a hard shell like a giant insect. His 4 arms ended in sharp claws that could cut through metal. Behind Thex stood 2 other Velconians with big compound eyes that looked like they could see everything. Kim had studied their culture for months before coming here. The Velconians only respected strength and power. They thought being kind was the same as being weak. They believed that talking instead of fighting meant you had already lost, but they had agreed to this meeting, which meant maybe they were getting tired of war. Maybe the cost of taking over so many worlds was becoming too high. Maybe they were ready to find a peaceful solution after all. The talks started with formal greetings, and each side explaining what they wanted. The Velconians spoke in their own language, which sounded like clicking and scraping noises. Translation machines changed their words into standard Galactic language that everyone could understand. Thex made it clear what the Velconians wanted. They would think about slowing down their expansion if they got exclusive rights to mine 3 empty star systems. It was almost nothing compared to what they had already taken. It was barely worth the fuel it took to fly to this meeting. Kim presented the Galactic Council's offer. The Velconians had to leave all Tilleran worlds completely. They had to free all the slaves they had taken. They had to pay back the races they had hurt. And they had to join a program where all species could colonize new worlds together fairly. The sound that came from Thex was supposed to be laughter, but it sounded more like metal scraping against stone. He clearly thought the human demands were ridiculous. Hours passed, and it became obvious that the Velconians did not want real peace. They were using this meeting to study how humans negotiated. They asked more and more questions about human military strength and how Earth defended itself when Kim tried to talk about the suffering Tillerans. Vex became openly hostile. Kim realized the meeting was failing, but he could not give up. Somewhere in the galaxy, Tillerans were being tortured while their worlds were stripped of resources. Every minute he delayed meant more innocent people would die. He had to keep trying even if it put his own team in danger. The Velconians had no intention of stopping their expansion. They saw other races as either useful tools or obstacles to be removed. The idea of treating other species as equals was completely foreign to them. They measured success only by how much territory they controlled and how many slaves they owned. As the first day ended, Kim felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. The Galactic Council had trusted him to find a peaceful solution, but the Velconians seemed determined to continue their campaign of conquest. The other races in the galaxy were counting on him to stop the violence, but he was just one human facing an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. That night Kim could not sleep. He kept thinking about the images he had seen of Tilleran slaves. Their gentle plant-like bodies had been modified with machines to make them better at mining. The Velconians had turned peaceful gardeners into living excavation equipment. It was an abomination that cried out for justice. Park So-young came to his quarters with more disturbing news. The station staff was acting strangely. They avoided eye contact and spoke in whispers. Several key personnel, including the station commander, had become unavailable, claiming they were in meetings with Velconian representatives. Kim began to suspect that the trap was already closing around them. The Velconians had not come here to negotiate. They had come to capture the human peace team and study them the same way they had studied the Tillerans before turning them into slaves. But Kim was determined to complete his mission. He had given his word to the Galactic Council and to the suffering people throughout Velconian space. He would not abandon them even if it meant walking into an obvious trap. Tomorrow he would continue the negotiations and try to find some way to reach the Velconian conscience. He did not know that Vex had no conscience to reach. The war commander saw Kim and his team not as fellow beings seeking peace, but as specimens to be studied. The Velconians had been planning this betrayal for months, and tomorrow they would spring their trap. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Kim Daeho was walking blindly toward his doom. The second day of talks started with what looked like good news. War Commander Vex came to the meeting room with what seemed like a real offer. The Velconians would free half of the Tilleran slaves and create safe zones on the occupied worlds. In return, they wanted human technology about faster-than-light communication and advanced medical systems. It was still far from what the Galactic Council wanted, but it was actual progress. Kim felt a small spark of hope. Maybe the Velconians were finally ready to negotiate seriously. Maybe there was a chance for peace after all. Lee Min-ho worked hard to set up secure communication channels with Earth and the Council headquarters. The quantum communication devices were very delicate and needed perfect adjustment. Any interference could delay important decisions for hours. While he worked, Choi Hae-won watched every move the Velconians made, looking for signs of lies or hidden meanings. Park So-young noticed the first warning signs. The Velconian guards had been replaced with different ones. These new guards wore slightly different symbols on their uniforms. When she told Kim about this, he thought it was just normal security changes. But as the day went on, more small changes became obvious. The human staff on the station seemed nervous. They would not look anyone in the eyes, and they spoke in whispers. When someone tried to talk to them, they would make excuses and hurry away. It was like they were afraid of something. During a break, Kim tried to contact Admiral Sarah Chun, who was supposed to be in charge of station security. The computer said she was not available and was currently meeting with Velconian representatives. This was strange, because Chun had promised to brief the human team about local security conditions. The breakthrough came when Choi Hae-won accidentally picked up part of a Velconian military transmission. Her language skills let her understand some of the words they were talking about, something called the harvest and human specimens. The translation was not complete, but the meaning was terrifying. The Velconians were not planning to negotiate at all. They were planning to capture the human team and study their bodies and brains. They wanted to learn how humans were so good at diplomacy so they could use that knowledge to trick other species. Kim immediately told his team to get ready to leave. They moved carefully through the station, trying to look normal while secretly preparing to escape. The Harmony was still docked at the station, but getting to it would mean going through areas now full of Valkonian soldiers. As they tried to leave their quarters, Vex appeared with a full military escort. His pretense of being a civilized negotiator was gone now, replaced by the cold look of a predator. He spoke in perfect Galactic standard, revealing that the translation devices had been unnecessary all along. It had been a trick to make the humans think the Valkonians were less intelligent than they really were. The trap was complete. The Valkonians had been planning this for months, using the peace talks as bait to capture human representatives. They had already taken control of the Harmony and locked up its crew. Station Aurora was now under Valkonian control, with the original staff either imprisoned or dead. The humans were completely alone, light years from any help, surrounded by enemies who saw them as research subjects rather than people. Vex explained their real plan. With cold precision, the Valkonian Empire had reached the limits of what they could accomplish through simple conquest. They needed to understand what made humans such good diplomats and survivors. Human brain patterns, genetic structure, and psychology would be studied in great detail. The knowledge they gained would help them manipulate other species more effectively in the future. Kim and his team were separated and taken to different parts of the station. The Valkonians were very organized about handling prisoners from different species. They had clearly done this many times before. They seemed especially interested in human emotional reactions, carefully recording every expression of fear, anger, or defiance. In his cell, Kim thought about how badly he had failed. The Galactic Council had trusted him to find a peaceful solution, but instead he had led his team into a trap. The Tillerans would continue to suffer while the Valkonians used captured human knowledge to improve their conquest techniques. Even worse, Earth would have no idea what had happened until it was too late. The Valkonian ships were probably already on their way to human colonies. Using information stolen from the Harmony computers, humanity would be defenseless against the coming attack. The interrogations began immediately. Valkonian scientists worked with frightening efficiency to map human responses to different types of pain and fear. They were particularly fascinated by humanity's ability to feel empathy and sacrifice themselves for others. These traits seemed completely alien to their predatory way of thinking. Each session revealed more about the Valkonians' ultimate goals. They did not just want to expand their territory, they wanted complete control over galactic civilization. Every species would serve the Valkonian Empire in whatever way was most useful. Park So-young was being held in a cell next to Kim. She managed to communicate through the station's maintenance systems. Her engineering knowledge let her build a crude communication device from spare parts. The news she shared was devastating. The Valkonians had already sent ships toward human space using navigation data taken from the Harmony. The human colonies would have no warning of the attack. Earth itself might be invaded before anyone realized the peace mission had failed. As hours turned into days, it became clear that rescue was impossible. The station was too heavily defended, and the Galactic Council had no military ships in this region. The humans would have to rely on their own skills, but even that seemed hopeless against Valkonian technology. A number of the torture sessions revealed human pain responses, fear triggers, and psychological breaking points. This information would be used to develop better ways of controlling human populations. The Valkonians had learned that humans were more affected by threats to their loved ones than by personal pain. This was a weakness they planned to exploit ruthlessly. When they invaded human space, they would use family members as hostages to force cooperation. They had done the same thing to dozens of other species with great success. Kim realized that traditional escape was impossible. The station's security was too tight, and there were too many Valkonian forces. But he remembered something Choi Hae-won had discovered about the station's original purpose. Aurora had been built around an ancient alien artifact, some kind of quantum resonance device left behind by a vanished civilization. The Valkonians had been studying it for years, trying to understand how it worked. One thought it might be a communication amplifier that could broadcast across the entire galaxy. If they could somehow reach the device and activate it, they might be able to send a message to Earth, not just information about the Valkonian threat, but something more powerful, something that would show humanity exactly what they were facing. It would almost certainly be a suicide mission, but it might give Earth the warning it needed to prepare for war. The fate of humanity and all the peaceful species in the galaxy might depend on their willingness to sacrifice everything for one desperate chance. Kim began planning their final gambit, knowing that tomorrow would bring either salvation or death. Commander Kim Dae-ho had always believed that words could solve any problem, but as he watched Velconian scientists prepare their torture equipment, he realized some enemies only understood force. The neural probes and genetic scanners around him showed that peaceful solutions had completely failed, yet even facing certain death, he would not give up his principles. The Velconians had been very thorough in taking over Station Aurora. Every communication system was watched, every hallway was guarded by armed soldiers. The original station workers had been killed or imprisoned, their bodies used for biological experiments. The cold efficiency of the operation showed how long the Velconians had been planning this betrayal in what used to be the station's medical bay. Vex personally watched the examination of human test subjects. His scientific curiosity seemed real, but he had no regard for intelligent life. He talked about humans the way a scientist might discuss interesting bacteria, noting their unusual ability for complex thought and emotional reactions. Park So-young had kept contact with the other team members through the station's maintenance network. Her engineering skills helped her avoid Velconian detection systems. The news she gathered kept getting worse. Ships had been sent to human colonies using navigation data stolen from the Harmony computers. Earth would be defenseless against the coming attack. The breakthrough came when Choi Hae-won discovered the station's real purpose. Aurora had been built around an ancient alien artifact, a quantum resonance device left by a civilization that had vanished long ago. The Velconians had been studying it for years, trying to understand what it did. Hae-won analysis suggested it might be a communication amplifier that could broadcast across the entire galaxy. During his final interrogation session, Kim learned the full scope of Velconian ambitions. They did not just want to conquer individual worlds, they intended to remake galactic civilization in their own image. Humans were seen as a special threat because of their diplomatic influence and ability to unite different species. The Empire's plan was to eliminate human leadership while studying their biology. For weaknesses, the torture sessions had revealed human pain responses, fear triggers, and ways to break their spirit. This information would be used to develop more effective methods of controlling human populations. The Velconians had learned that humans were more likely to break when their loved ones were threatened than when they themselves were tortured. This was a weakness they planned to use without mercy when they invaded human space. They would use families as hostages to force cooperation. As the days passed, Kim realized that normal escape was impossible. The station's security was too strong and the Velconian forces too numerous. But the ancient device offered a different possibility. If they could activate it, they might be able to send a message to Earth, not just information about the Velconian threat, but something more powerful, a complete understanding of what humanity was facing and what they needed to do to survive. It would almost certainly be a suicide mission, but it might give Earth the warning it needed to prepare for war. Working with their limited resources, the human team began planning a desperate plan. They would try to reach the device and use it to broadcast a final message to humanity. The plan required perfect timing and complete sacrifice. Park So-young would create a distraction by overloading the station's power systems, causing equipment failures throughout. Aurora Lee Min-ho would use the chaos to reach the communication center and try to contact Earth. Choi Hae-won would guide Kim to the ancient device. The operation started during the station's night cycle when Velconian activity was lowest. So-young's sabotage was devastatingly effective, plunging entire sections of Aurora into darkness. Emergency lights cast strange shadows as alarms sounded throughout the station. The Velconians responded with military precision, but their focus on containing the immediate crisis created the opening the humans needed. Guards rushed to deal with the power failures, leaving other areas temporarily undefended. Lee Min-ho reached the communication center but found it too badly damaged by the power surge. The backup systems were offline and the quantum devices had been destroyed. His sacrifice had bought time for the others, but the main mission still seemed impossible. Kim and Hae-won fought their way through dark corridors, using their knowledge of the station's layout to avoid Velconian patrols. The ancient device was housed in the station's core. Surrounded by research equipment and alien artifacts, as they got closer, the device began to make a humming sound, responding to their presence in ways the Velconians had never achieved. The quantum resonance seemed to recognize something in human consciousness that other species lacked. The final confrontation came as Thex and his forces cornered the remaining humans in the device chamber. The war commander was furious at the disruption of his research, but also curious about human desperation. He offered Kim a choice: surrender peacefully, and the other humans would die quickly, continue resisting, and watch them suffer long torture sessions. It was the kind of cruel choice the Velconians enjoyed offering their victims. Kim's response was to place his hand directly on the ancient device. The quantum resonance activated immediately, creating a connection that spanned the entire galaxy. But instead of sending a simple message, the device amplified human consciousness itself. The complete experience of Velconian brutality was broadcast directly to Earth. Every human on the planet suddenly understood exactly what had happened to their peacekeepers. They felt Kim's pain, his determination, and his desperate hope that his sacrifice might save his people. The transmission lasted only moments before the weapons ended Kim's life, but it was enough. The quantum resonance had done more than just share information. It had created a permanent connection between human minds and the galactic quantum field across the galaxy. Every human felt the death of their representative as if it were their own. They experienced the systematic torture of the diplomatic team, the enslavement of the Tillerans, and the Empire's plans for human extermination. The sensation was unlike anything in human history. Not just the leaders, but every citizen, from farmers to factory workers, suddenly understood the true nature of the Velconian threat. They saw the images of Tilleran slaves, their bodies modified to serve as living mining equipment. More importantly, they understood that diplomacy had failed completely. The Velconians could not be reasoned with or reformed. They were a cancer in the galaxy that would continue to spread until someone stopped them with overwhelming force. The quantum connection also shared tactical information. Every human military officer suddenly had detailed knowledge of Velconian ship designs, weapon systems, and strategic weaknesses. The information Kim had died to transmit would give humanity the tools they needed for war. In his final moments, Kim felt a strange sense of peace. He had failed as a diplomat, but perhaps he had succeeded as something more important. He had given his people the truth and the means to act on it. The age of human diplomacy was over, but the age of human justice was about to begin. The galaxy would soon learn that killing a human peacekeeper was the worst mistake the Velconian Empire could have made. The quantum resonance wave hit Earth like a psychic earthquake in Seoul. President Yoon Tae-jin was in the middle of a cabinet meeting when the sensation struck. For a brief moment, every human on the planet experienced Commander Kim Dae-ho final moments through the ancient alien device. They felt his pain, his determination, and his desperate hope that his sacrifice might save his people. Experience was unlike anything in human history. Not just the government leaders, but every citizen, from office workers to street cleaners, suddenly understood the true nature of the Velconian threat. The images and emotions sent through the device showed the systematic torture of the diplomatic team, the enslavement of the Tillerans and the Empire's plans for human extermination. Admiral Lee Yong-soo was inspecting the space fleet when the transmission reached him. The sensation of Kim's death hit him like a physical blow, but more importantly, it gave him complete knowledge of the tactical situation. Velconian fleet positions, their technology weaknesses, and their strategic blind spots were all burned into his mind, along with the emotional trauma. Dr. Park Kyung-hee was working in her biology laboratory when she experienced the transmission. The detailed medical scans the Velconians had performed on human prisoners gave her unprecedented insight into their own biology. She understood immediately that the Empire's apparent strength was based on careful image management rather than actual superiority. The global response was immediate and without precedent. Within hours of the transmission, every major government on Earth had declared war on the Velconian Empire. The usual political divisions and international conflicts were set aside. As humanity faced an existential threat, the United Nations Security Council passed a war resolution with a unanimous vote. General Kim Soo-hyun, commanding officer of Earth Rapid Response Forces, began moving troops within minutes of experiencing Kim Death, the human military, had been designed for peacekeeping and defense, but the quantum transmission had revealed Valkonian tactical patterns and weaknesses. She immediately began changing human strategies to exploit these vulnerabilities. The industrial response was equally swift. Factory owner Choi Byung-ho converted his electronics plants to produce military equipment overnight. The quantum transmission had included detailed scans of Valkonian technology, allowing human engineers to develop countermeasures with incredible speed. Every major corporation on Earth began changing their production lines for war materials. Dr. Shin-A-Ra Earth chief physicist realized that the ancient device had done more than just send information. The quantum resonance had created a permanent connection between human consciousness and the galactic quantum field. This meant humans could potentially communicate instantly across any distance, giving them a crucial advantage in coordinating military operations. The transformation of human society was complete within days. Nations that had been enemies for centuries now worked together with perfect coordination. The quantum link had created a shared understanding of what was at stake, eliminating the usual problems and miscommunication that hurt international cooperation. Commander Oh Se-jin, leading Earth experimental Starship program, found that the quantum resonance had improved human spatial awareness and reaction times. Pilots who had struggled with faster-than-light navigation suddenly found themselves capable of maneuvers that had been considered impossible. The connection to the galactic quantum field was changing humanity at a basic level. The first human warships launched within a week of the transmission. These vessels used technology reverse-engineered from Valkonian data, but adapted to human strengths rather than copied directly. Where Valkonian ships relied on brute force and heavy armor, human vessels emphasized speed, maneuverability, and coordinated tactics. Captain Nam Hae-jin commanded the lead ship in humanity first military fleet. Her vessel, the Retribution, was built around the principle of asymmetric warfare rather than matching Valkonian firepower directly. It was designed to exploit the weaknesses revealed in Kim's final transmission. The ship quantum communication systems allowed for perfect coordination with other human vessels. Every pilot, gunner, and engineer was connected through the quantum link, creating a level of teamwork that other species found incomprehensible. The mobilization extended beyond military forces. Every human colony, research station, and trading post became part of the war effort. The quantum connection allowed for coordination on a scale that amazed other species. Where the Galactic Council required months of debate to make decisions, humanity could adapt and respond in real time. Ambassador Kang Min-young, humanity representative to the Galactic Council, delivered Earth declaration of war with cold precision. Her words were broadcast across the galaxy, carrying the weight of humanity collective rage. She made it clear that the age of human diplomacy was over. The other species watched in amazement as humanity transformed from peaceful mediators to efficient warriors overnight. The quantum resonance had not just shared information, it had created a new form of human consciousness perfectly adapted for coordinated conflict. The Galactic Council members were stunned by the speed and completeness of the human response. Most species required years to mobilize for major conflicts, but humanity had gone from peace to total war in less than a week. The quantum link had eliminated every bureaucratic delay and logistical problem that normally slowed military preparation. Earth factories worked around the clock, producing weapon ships and equipment at rates that seemed impossible. Human workers no longer needed detailed instructions or supervision. The quantum connection let them coordinate their efforts with supernatural efficiency. Scientists who had spent decades studying theoretical physics suddenly found themselves developing practical weapon systems. Engineers who had built civilian spacecraft were now designing vessels capable of destroying entire fleets. The shared knowledge from Kim's sacrifice had accelerated human development by decades. The first human fleet departed Earth with a simple mission: rescue any surviving prisoners and begin the systematic destruction of Valkonian military assets. There would be no negotiation, no mercy, and no peace until the Empire was completely eliminated. Captain Nam announced the human position to the galaxy in a broadcast that reached every inhabited world. The Valkonians had wanted to study human nature. Now they would experience it firsthand. Humanity had tried diplomacy and been betrayed. Now they would demonstrate why they had been such effective peacekeepers. The galaxy was about to learn that humans made excellent peacekeepers not because they were naturally peaceful, but because they understood the true cost of peace. When that peace was broken, their response would be swift, coordinated, and absolutely devastating. The murder of Kim Dae-ho had awakened something in the human spirit that would forever change the balance between good and evil in the galaxy. The Velconian Empire had made the worst mistake in their long history of conquest. They had killed a human peacekeeper, and now Earth had declared total war. The first human fleet reached Velconian space exactly 12 days after. Commander Kim Dae-ho, Death Captain Nam Hae-jin. Task Force had 30 ships, each one built with technology that should have been impossible for such a young space-traveling species. The quantum resonance had accelerated human development by decades, turning Earth industrial capacity into a weapon of unprecedented efficiency. The first battle happened near the mining colony of Vex 7, where enslaved Tillerans were being used to extract rare minerals. The Velconian defense fleet had 47 ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than any human vessel. By normal military analysis, the humans should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, the battle lasted less than an hour with complete Velconian casualties. The key to human victory was not superior firepower but perfect coordination. Every human ship moved as part of a single organism, responding to threats and opportunities with inhuman precision. The quantum link allowed for instant communication and shared sensor data, creating a tactical awareness that the Velconians could not match. Admiral Lee Yong-soo watched the battle from Earth Command Center, experiencing every moment through the quantum connection. The human fleet fought with a combination of scientific precision and emotional intensity that surprised even their own commanders. The memory of Kim torture drove them to tactical perfection, while the quantum link prevented the confusion that usually hurt space battles. The liberation of Vex 7 revealed the true horror of Velconian occupation. The Tillerans had been reduced to biological machines, their root systems surgically changed to process minerals more efficiently. Many had been driven insane by the modifications, their natural empathy twisted into tools of industrial production. Human rescue workers operated with quiet efficiency, but their rage was transmitted through the quantum link to every human in the galaxy. Each act of Velconian cruelty strengthened humanity resolve and improved their coordination. The shared emotional experience was turning humans into a collective intelligence focused entirely on destroying their enemies. Dr. Park Kyung-hee arrived with the second wave of ships, bringing medical equipment designed to reverse Velconian modifications. Her work revealed the systematic nature of the Empire cruelty. They did not just enslave other species, they reshaped them to serve specific functions, eliminating any traits that might lead to resistance or independent thought. The speed of human advancement amazed the Galactic Council. Within weeks, Earth had developed weapons and tactics that matched or exceeded Velconian technology. The quantum resonance had not just shared information, it had created a form of collective intelligence that could solve problems at superhuman speed. Every human scientist, engineer, and strategist was contributing to a single unified war effort. Ideas that would normally take years to develop and test were being implemented in days. The quantum connection eliminated the usual delays caused by communication problems, bureaucracy, and conflicting priorities. General Kim Soo-hyun established forward bases and liberated systems, but these installations were unlike anything seen in previous galactic conflicts. Human bases were built for rapid deployment and perfect coordination with quantum communication arrays that allowed for real-time tactical adjustments across vast distances. The Velconians found themselves fighting an enemy that could adapt faster than they could respond. Human commanders seemed to anticipate every move, while human forces appeared in unexpected places with supernatural timing. The psychological impact on Velconian troops was severe. The Empire had built their power on the assumption that other species were fundamentally inferior, useful only as slaves or resources. The discovery that humans could not only match their technology but exceed their coordination challenged their entire worldview. Velconian morale began to collapse as their inferior enemies systematically destroyed their military assets. Commander Oh Se-jin led deep strike missions that targeted Velconian infrastructure. Her ships moved through enemy territory with ghostly efficiency, appearing suddenly to destroy supply lines and communication nodes before vanishing back into hyperspace. The quantum link allowed for navigation and timing that made human forces seem almost supernatural. The industrial transformation of human space was equally impressive. Colonies that had been peaceful research stations became manufacturing centers overnight. The quantum resonance had shared not just technical knowledge, but also the emotional drive to use it effectively. Every human settlement contributed to the war effort with passionate efficiency. Captain Park Dong-hyeon commanded the siege of Velconian Prime, the Empire capital world. The battle was expected to last months, but human forces had developed tactics specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses revealed in Kim. Final transmission: the planet defensive systems were overwhelmed within days. The fall of Velconian Prime marked the beginning of the Empire's complete collapse. Without their central command structure, individual Velconian fleets found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The quantum link allowed human forces to share tactical information instantly. This created a military intelligence network that made traditional spying obsolete. Human commanders knew about Velconian movements almost before the Velconians themselves did. The Empire forces began surrendering rather than face the coordinated fury of human military units. Dr. Shin Era research into the quantum resonance revealed that humanity's connection to the galactic field was still growing stronger. What had begun as a response to Kim's death had evolved into a permanent enhancement of human consciousness. This gave them advantages that extended far beyond military applications. The other species in the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity systematically dismantled an empire that had seemed invincible. The transformation from peaceful diplomats to efficient warriors had taken only weeks, but the results were devastating to Velconian power. The final phase of the war began when human forces located the main Velconian research facilities. These installations contained not just human prisoners but also victims from dozens of other species. The liberation of these facilities revealed the true scope of Velconian cruelty. The research centers showed evidence of biological experiments that had lasted for centuries. The Velconians had treated intelligent beings like laboratory animals, testing the limits of pain, fear, and despair. The quantum resonance allowed human observers to experience these discoveries with full emotional impact. This shared trauma only strengthened humanity. Resolve: the war was no longer just about revenge for Kim's death. It had become a mission to eliminate a form of evil that threatened all intelligent life in the galaxy. The Velconian Empire had to be completely destroyed to prevent future atrocities. The speed and efficiency of human victory shocked every observer. The species that had been known for diplomatic flexibility had evolved into something far more dangerous: a collective intelligence capable of perfect military coordination. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of a new form of consciousness. Within months of Kim's death, the Velconian Empire was completely defeated. Their military was destroyed, their colonies liberated, and their leadership captured. The quantum resonance had transformed humanity from peaceful mediators into the galaxy's most effective military force. The war crimes trials began on the neutral world of Sanctuary, with representatives from every species that had suffered under Velconian rule. The proceedings were unlike anything in galactic history, not because of their size, but because of their efficiency. Human investigators had used the quantum resonance to gather evidence with unprecedented thoroughness, documenting every crime committed by the Empire across 3 centuries of expansion. War Commander Lex captured during the fall of Velconian Prime faced charges for the murder of Commander Kim Dae-ho and the torture of diplomatic personnel. His defense was that he had been following the laws of his own species, but the evidence presented by human prosecutors revealed a systematic campaign of cruelty that went beyond even Velconian military rules. The trials were led by Judge Yoon Mi-kyung, a human legal scholar who had spent decades studying interspecies law. Her decisions were informed not just by galactic legal history, but by the quantum-enhanced understanding of justice that now characterized human thought. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy, serving as both legal process and educational tool. The evidence presented revealed the true scope of Velconian crimes. They had not just enslaved other species, but had conducted biological experiments designed to create more efficient slave populations. The research facilities contained detailed records of surgical modifications, psychological conditioning, and genetic manipulation performed on billions of intelligent beings. Dr. Park Kyung-hee testified about the medical horrors discovered in liberated territories. The Velconians had treated other species like laboratory animals, testing the limits of pain, fear, and despair. The quantum resonance allowed human observers to experience these testimonies with full emotional impact, ensuring that the trials would be remembered across the galaxy. The Galactic Council faced a crisis of legitimacy. Their diplomatic approach had failed to prevent centuries of suffering, while humanity's military response had ended the threat within months. Many species began questioning whether traditional galactic governance was adequate for dealing with truly evil civilizations. President Yoon Tae-jin addressed the Galactic Assembly with a proposal that would reshape interspecies relations. Humanity would establish a new organization dedicated to protecting peaceful species from aggressive empires. The Galactic Peace Enforcement Agency would have the authority to intervene militarily when diplomacy failed. The proposal was controversial but necessary. The Velconian Empire had proven that some civilizations were incapable of coexistence and would only respond to overwhelming force. The traditional galactic reliance on negotiation and compromise had allowed evil to flourish while good beings suffered. Admiral Lee Young-soo became the first director of peace enforcement, commanding a fleet of human vessels stationed throughout the galaxy. These ships were designed not for conquest, but for rapid response to threats against peaceful species. The quantum communication network allowed for coordination across galactic distances. The reconstruction of liberated territories required unprecedented cooperation between species. Human engineers worked alongside tiller and botanists, crystalline architects, and dozens of other specialists to rebuild worlds devastated by Velconian occupation. The quantum resonance had given humans the ability to understand and communicate with other species at a profound level. Commander Oh Se-jin established the Galactic Rescue Service, dedicated to finding and freeing any remaining Velconian prisoners. Her teams used quantum-enhanced search techniques to locate hidden facilities and secret research stations. The work was dangerous and emotionally devastating, but the quantum connection allowed human rescuers to share the psychological burden. The trials concluded with the complete dissolution of the Velconian Empire. The surviving members of the species were divided into small groups and moved to supervised colonies where they could be watched and hopefully reformed. The harshest sentences were reserved for the leadership, but even ordinary soldiers faced punishment for their participation in genocidal campaigns. The new galactic order that emerged was fundamentally different from what had come before. Human technology and organizational methods had proven superior to traditional diplomatic approaches, but humanity used their advantages to strengthen rather than replace existing institutions. The Galactic Council remained the primary governing body, but it now had enforcement capabilities that made its decisions meaningful. Transformation of human society continued even after the war ended. The quantum resonance had created a form of collective consciousness that extended beyond military applications. Human scientists, artists, and philosophers now work together with unprecedented creativity and efficiency. The species that had been known for diplomatic flexibility had evolved into something far more powerful. The quantum connection had eliminated the usual barriers between individual minds, creating a form of group intelligence that could solve problems at superhuman speed. The memorial to Commander Kim Dae-ho was built on Station Aurora, now reconstructed as a monument to the victims of Velconian cruelty. The site served as both a reminder of the costs of evil and a symbol of humanity's commitment to protecting the innocent. The quantum resonance device that had transmitted his final moments was preserved as a sacred artifact. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their military skill, but their ability to transform tragedy into determination. The murder of a single peacekeeper had awakened something in the human spirit that would forever change the balance of power between good and evil. 5 years after the war ended, the galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. The threat of overwhelming human retaliation had discouraged potential aggressors, while the Peace Enforcement Agency provided rapid response to emerging threats. The age of unchecked expansion and casual cruelty was over. The lesson was clear to every species in the galaxy. Humans made excellent peacekeepers, not because they were naturally peaceful, but because they understood the true cost of peace. When that peace was broken, their response would be swift, coordinated, and absolutely devastating. The Galactic Peace Enforcement Agency had stations in every major system, each one equipped with quantum communication devices and human crews ready to respond to threats within hours. The mere existence of these forces was enough to prevent most conflicts before they started. The other species had learned to respect human authority not through fear but through recognition of their superior organizational abilities. The quantum resonance had given humanity capabilities that no other species could match, making them natural leaders in the new galactic order. The Tilleran worlds were rebuilt as garden paradises, with human technology ensuring that their people would never again face the horror of enslavement. The rescued Tillerans worked alongside human engineers to create agricultural systems that could feed dozens of species. The quantum connection continued to evolve, with new humans born after the resonance showing even stronger links to the galactic field. These children could communicate across vast distances and coordinate complex tasks with supernatural efficiency. They represented the future of human consciousness. Educational programs were established to teach other species about the dangers of unchecked aggression and the importance of protecting the innocent. The story of Kim Dae-ho's sacrifice became required learning in schools across the galaxy, ensuring that future generations would understand the price of peace. The memorial services, held every year on the anniversary of Kim's death, drew representatives from hundreds of worlds. The ceremony served as both remembrance and warning, reminding the galaxy that humanity's commitment to justice was eternal and absolute. The new galactic constitution included provisions for immediate military intervention against species that practiced slavery, genocide, or systematic oppression. The human model had proven that some evils could only be stopped through overwhelming force applied with perfect coordination. Trade agreements and diplomatic treaties now included clauses requiring adherence to basic standards of sentient rights. Any violation would trigger immediate response from the Peace Enforcement Agency. The threat was enough to prevent most potential problems before they developed. The galaxy had entered a new age of protected peace where the strong were obligated to defend the weak and evil was met with swift justice. The murder of Kim Dae-ho had taught every species that humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement was ensuring that when war came it would be brief, decisive, and ultimately just.